Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice faceless Friday morning over here as we are actually getting prepared to move. So everything is locked away in boxes as of the moment. But I wanted to create this video as there is some very important things to be looking at on the higher term time frame. It's going to be the monthly. As always, the monthly closure is humongous, and it is also not just monthly closure, but it's also quarterly as well. Other than that, because we are moving, time is going to be very, very scarce in the next 24 to 48 hours. So please understand that we're going to do our best to get back to to respond to emails and whatnot. But for right now, it will be difficult as we will literally not have internet for a while here. All right, sweet. So let's just jump into it right now. I wanted to start off with the monthly look on Bitcoin. This is, as always, the most important thing coming into the end of the month here. Again, it is also the end of quarter as well. This is the accumulation distribution indicator. And of course, what is the main thing with this chart? Well, it has been incredibly accurate in calling macro reversals, both to the upside and the downside, with slope changes in the extreme zones. So what do I mean by slope change in the extreme zone? Well, I mean things like this essentially, or actually this is not exactly what I mean, but if I put a vertical line right here, as you can see, the slope changes from a downslope, obviously, to then an upslope and maintains that for two close over closures. Very, very important right there. Same thing over here. Slope changes. I'm actually going to mark these off. Or actually, you know what? We can just get rid of these for right now because we don't actually need them. I'll just put it to where the slope changes. Boom, boom, boom. And this one over here has not changed, obviously, just yet. And as you can see, pretty damn accurate in getting not necessarily the low, but around the low before the trend does reverse, or at least the upside momentum once again is regained. So again, it does take a few months from that actual signal, or sorry, from that level actually being hit, meaning that the slope actually changes to the next sort of up thrust move, but it gives us a good indication as to, when to be expecting essentially reversals on the macro scale to the upside or the downside. Of course, I've only plotted the ones that are to the upside here, but to the downside it does work similarly, although not as well, I would say. Anyways, in this case, coming into October, if we start to see the slope of the current move lessen, maybe even get a positive slope, which I think is rather unlikely, but at least less, and that would be another good indication that Bitcoin is getting closer to a low here. And if we start to really see it lose its curvature, then that would be another good warning signal that, hey, things are starting to level out, and that would change the overall outlook long term. Of course, until we actually get that open into October and see the next tick on this, we obviously will not know. But for right now, just a big consideration coming into the next 24 hours. Anyways, now on to the short-term time frame analysis. I wanted to follow up on yesterday's short-term time frame analysis and really the analysis from the past week or so, a little bit more than a week, about 10 days now, as Bitcoin continues to range. So yesterday, we were looking at a move to the range highs. We were looking at a rejection to the range highs, and then very likely back down somewhere around this blue box territory over here. Looks like it barely just grazed it, although not quite, but fair enough. And the range continues. What do you know? So short term, what essentially am I looking for? I'm looking for the range to continue, honestly. Do we have any sort of obvious indications over here on the 4-hour time frame? Actually, no, as of right now. If we run down the list, I do want to address that 12-hour BBWP is still extremely on the lows, and I actually expect this to kind of come back down a little bit more. So maybe resolution a little bit later today, that being around US market open, but probably in between now, it's going to be relatively boring. And of course, the daily is also incredibly low, as we did identify yesterday. Let me just get rid of that. It's kind of annoying. And my OCD is taking off right there. But yes, we have 2 days now of below 1 percentile. So moves are brewing probably for an explosive early October, I suspect. And in this case right here, we can now go into the short-term time frame, stochastic momentum to get a little bit of a bias, although as you probably noticed, haven't really cared too much about this as long as Bitcoin kind of remains within range. I care more about closures outside, that being above the range highs or below the range lows. But in this case, we do see 6-hour stochastic momentum will turn to the downside with a closure below 19,570. 4-hour will be turning down below 19,060. So currently it is up. And then the hourly is also going to be down, I believe, below 19,500. So short term, kind of flippy floppy there. It doesn't really give me much of a bias, which is why I do say sideways probably continues. And if we go back to this chart here, we can now talk about what a range resolution would look like. So two ways, or well, obviously two ways of doing this, the upside and the downside. I know that's not too helpful, but in this case, because we are talking about, a long-term higher time frame macro support here, I'd really want to see a higher term time frame close below the range lows, which would be about 18,100 or so, actually just slightly below there. By the same token, and I should also talk about what to expect after that, massively new lows. When I talk about massively new lows, I'm talking about those 2-day targets still being viable down to probably the mid $16,000 territory, which we'll get into a little bit later. To the upside, short term, I would call a range resolution with any sort of a 4-hour closure above about 19,750 or an hourly above about 19,900. At that point, I'd be looking for one more try towards 20,500. And if Bitcoin can even just tick above the 27th of September high, which is actually below 20,500, which is 20,400, then I would be looking for continuation, probably for another $1,000 plus rip, somewhere around about 21,400 to 21,500 up here. So again, not too interested in the short-term timeframes since we have a bit of a tightening range. Interested in the higher-term timeframes for the long-term look on this one. Anyways, moving now on into the 2-day timeframe chart. I wanted to follow up on this one because it did have a closure last night, and with that closure last night, we did maintain the downside curvature on 2-day stochastic momentum. So first things first, let me explain this signal. It is essentially a volatility versus stochastic momentum signal. The volatility indicator we are using is BBWP here, and any sort of a move below about 10 percentile has produced an expansion phase from those extreme lows of about 35% done over the course of just under 19 days, so that's like 2.5 weeks. The stochastic oscillator has been correct in getting the volatility expansion direction 84.5% of the time. That's going to be going up because this iteration has also worked, but has not necessarily met the averages just yet. And the first deviation, which is where we expect about 60% of the results to fall between, would be between about 25.5% all the way up to almost 44%. So in this case, with that last closure, it did maintain downside curvature. So the signal is still viable. It is still active, again, as long as this condition is met, which has now updated the momentum pivot to 18,800. That means that if Bitcoin, not today, but tomorrow closes below that level, downside momentum remains, and the probability of this seeing further downside is, well, relatively high. Now, thus far from the signal actually given off of these extreme lows here, we have seen a pretty nice move to the downside, about 11%. I do believe, yeah, just under 11% right there. So is that within the context of even the first deviation? No, but it is, it is not unheard of. We have seen quite muted signals like that in the past. I think the priorly lowest one was 18%. So this actually would be, this kind of would be a bit of an outlier. But just playing around with numbers, as I did say before, this can kind of give us a bias as to where to look for, at least myself a bias as to where to look for if Bitcoin were to fall below that $18,100 low on a higher term time frame closure on CME. 25% puts you at around 16, 15, somewhere around there. And of course, this signal, as my voice cracks in the background, sorry about that, has been around for, this is going to be day number 12 now. So again, the average days that we expect on this signal to take is about 19. So, would still be kind of playing within the context of that. But ultimately, if this one's going to continue, we do expect that it will maintain below the momentum pivot right here, which means to watch 18,800 tomorrow, not today, but tomorrow. So that will be very, 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 very big alongside the monthly accumulation distribution indicator chart over here. Of course, we'll check back in on that tomorrow, see where things are at, see what's essentially most likely, and then follow back up. Other than that, I'm going to be having my hands full packing everything. So again, I want to request, just a little bit of understanding there. And if I do some updates, if price action really starts to move, I'll probably do it on Instagram, just easier to do, which you can find a link to in the description below. And sweet, yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. I will be signing off now. Hopefully we'll have internet connection in the next 24 hours. With that said, take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.